increasingly getting tired of the conflict in Palestine, between Palestine and Israel. And for the past 20 years, there's been a movement amongst the Palestinians living within what you can maybe call Palestine for perhaps an alternative solution, a one-state solution where they convert their struggle into a civil rights struggle. We on our side of the house think that this will create a more enduring peace. And we don't think that their solution is going to do any good. It's that simple. I'll be talking about how if we were to push through with their policy, what you'll do is that you'll just concretize the unlawful gains that Israel has committed in the past few years, and while you will be creating a life of living hell for the Palestinians who are living in no more than what appears to be Bantustans in both West Bank and the Gaza Strip. But before that, a few rebuttal. First, on problems of the one-state solution that were posited by Naomi. She said we'll be only pandering to the firebrands like Hamas. Well, we don't think that's the case. People like Khalid Mashar, people like Mahmoud Bagati, people like Edward Said are firmly in the mainstream of Palestinian society, and we think we have the full support as well. But even assuming we are pandering to the firebrands, we don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Being able to co-opt the firebrands for something that they've considered something that they believe in as well is good, because these people won't then resort to things like firing rockets to get their message heard, because we are also acquiescing to something that they have acknowledged to be something that they wanted to as well. But more importantly, what do? We force them to make a choice. Because one of the things that they fear more above other things is to threaten the character of the Jewish state. So what would happen here is if they reject this move, what happens is that it makes more likely for the creation of a two-state solution. But if they do accept this offer, then what happens is that you have the civil rights movement that we were talking about. Some nuance that Naomi never once was able to get her head around. But let's look at the arguments that they proposed, right? Firstly, about the ideas of protections. She argued that if they were to be recognized as a full state, then the right of collective self-defense comes in. But she ignored Robin's analysis how the right to collective self-defense can only be activated through the acquiescence of the United Nations Security Council, which requires a positive vote from the United States. But at no point in her analysis did she prove why the United States would suddenly divorce itself from all the years of cooperation with Israel to then come to the aid of Palestine. But more importantly, we do agree, being recognized as a state, you can say that you are now invading another state. But that only becomes effective once someone actually bothers to want to help you. But recognizing that Israel is supported by the United States of America, and many people don't want to piss off the United States of America, we think once we can acknowledge that you are being invaded, nothing else happens beyond that point. But let's examine the coalitions that you talked about, France, the United Kingdom, and so on and so forth. They won't help you. Even though the coalition did vote for partial membership for the recognition of partial statehood for the Palestinian state, they only did so because of a symbolic gesture. All these countries still believed that any form of enduring peace still has to be based on the 1993 Oslo Accords that determined that bilateral negotiations was the only way for the recognition of the Palestinian state. So the moment you push through your policy, what happens is that the coalition that pushed through the vote that we saw a couple of weeks ago will not be willing to help the Palestinian cause. But what do we do on our side of the house? We think that we allow them to fight for their rights. We allow them to take away the use of violence because now they can participate in the democratic process within Israel itself to be heard. And no law can the Israelis, people like Benjamin Netanyahu or the Twitter handle IDF spokesperson ever again say that the Palestinians are constantly trying to use force to assert their cause, because we take away that rhetoric and we force them to deal with the issues. Next, they said Israel won't be belligerent. Yeah, right. Look at the history of Israel basically ignoring United Nations resolutions. We don't think anything's going to happen here. Benjamin Netanyahu made it quite clear that to him, the sovereignty and the security and basically any form of threat towards the Israeli state will basically not be entertained, and he'll push through his own agenda anyway. They said, but look, countries like Egypt will then now be a threat to Israel. No, it won't. Like if you look at the Arab Spring, now increasingly seeing increasingly democratic states around Israel and Palestine. So these people need the help of the United Nations and the United States to establish their nascent democracies, which therefore means that they can't easily piss off Israel as one would expect, because they need the help of the United States. So we don't think that would necessarily mean that Israel will be less belligerent. But last point, they say Hamas. Well, let's look at it this way. It's true that Hamas now becomes something of your problem, right? The Palestinian problem. But that doesn't equate to them being able to control Hamas. Because we think Hamas will be absolutely pissed right now. When Mahmoud Abbas tries to push through full membership right now at the exclusion of Hamas, they're going to be extremely pissed off that he's been excluded from the forging of some kind of Palestinian statehood. We think it's going to create a civil war that Robin talked about that he never dealt with. But said yes.
Can you explain how getting a state stops a group of people from being able to negotiate an international law for borders for a right of return?
I'm sorry, repeat that again?
Can you explain why getting statehood stops people from being able to negotiate for more things, as Robin accepts they want?
No, it's not just about them being stopped from negotiating for more things, but it does little beyond just saying that you are now a state, you're off to fend yourself. Because what you require in yourself, the House, is to prove that after recognizing Palestine as a state, that someone will now be willing to just piss off the United States and come to the help of Palestine. But that's never been proven on that side of the House. So on to my point of substantive. Let's look at what's happening right now. If you were to look at a map of the West Bank, there are settlements reaching all the way to Jericho. And Jericho, if you were to look at a map of the West Bank, is to the far extreme east, or it's close basically to the Red Sea. The Gaza Strip now is no longer than 30 kilometers in length. And if you look at the regions of the West Bank, they're effectively like the Bantustans that you see in South Africa, whereby they're broken up into different pieces, whereby people don't have access to things like hospitals and to other necessities. It's difficult for them to cross beyond certain timings or during certain dates. So when you push them for full membership, we're assuming that this is the version of Palestine that you basically are going to concretize. And what's the problem with this? Because now the Palestinians basically live in a place where their existence means very little because they can't access the kind of necessities that is essential for meaningful existence for these Palestinians. And like Robin argued, statehood is only a means to an end. And that end is the end of meaningful existence. Now what then happens as well in our context is that if you concretize this version of Palestine and they are still facing the problems that I've just highlighted, then it becomes the onus of the Palestinians to do something about it. But recognizing that the areas of necessity still lies firmly with Israel, it becomes almost impossible for them to assert the kind of things that they actually need. Ladies and gentlemen, this whole idea about two-state solution has been a lie that has been peddled for the longest time, only to try and give the illusion that some kind of peace can be achieved. The only kind of peace that can be achieved is if this becomes a civil rights movement we are proud to oppose.